people, and welcome back to the GavGoesIn podcast. Guys, big news. Obviously, some of you guys have probably seen this news already anyway. You know, as you can see in the thumbnail, Bruno Fernandes, 72 hours ultimatum to answer Al Hilal's offer. And again, Alejandro Garnacho comments from Ruben Amorim, which, I think I have to say, as much as frustrated as I am in Amorim potentially staying, big up Killer, big up to Sham as well. As much as I'm frustrated in Ruben Amorim staying, I think, I'm actually very positive because I'm looking at two players, that do divide this fan base. Big up to Saeed as well. I'm looking at two players that do divide this fan base, and it's looking pretty likely that both players will be going. And again, if you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, you would know that these are two of the players that I have said for, over the past three years now, I would say, are, they're part of the biggest problem at the club. And as I said, for me, it's encouraging to see that it's looking finally, like these two players are on their way out of the club. And as I said, big up Daniela, big up Barbara as well for coming on. And as I said, I think it's positive signs, guys. Let me know what you think, because again, Bruno Fernandes again has been given 72 hours. I'm hearing, guys, Al Hilal are looking to offer him, I think it's something close to what, 700 grand a week. I mean, that is mind-boggling money, to be fair. And let's be honest, man, you have to be an absolute fool to turn that money down. He's going to be turning 31 again next season as well. If I'm Bruno Fernandes, I'm looking at Man United thinking, when are we actually going to get back into Europe? And this money's not going to be there forever. So for me, it's a no-brainer, man, for him to go to Saudi. And again, for me, it's important if the club want to go in a new direction, and if the club want to be taken seriously again, they have to be definitely exploring this deal. I don't really want to hear that Bruno wants to think about it. I think the club need to push him in that direction and definitely just agree to that deal, man. Because to get 100 odd million for Bruno Fernandes, turning 31, and obviously for himself, for his family, it's a no-brainer for both sides. And again, United need that money to invest in the squad properly, And I think it's important as well, the likes of Kobe Mainu. I think if I'm Kobe Mainu, I'm looking at this Bruno deal and thinking, do you know what, for his career, he needs Bruno to move on, because again, Amorim loves this three at the back system. But Bruno Fernandes, because under this manager, he's the captain, he's an automatic starter for this manager, that's taking up a space, So if I'm Kobe Mainu, I'm hoping Bruno accepts this deal. And for me, as I said, it's a no-brainer, man. And I think, personally, do I think Bruno accepts this offer? I do, because again, the money is just too good to turn down. And if I'm looking at Ineos, I know Amorim obviously isn't going to be too happy, but again, this ain't about Amorim. Amorim just needs to, in all honesty, he needs to just count his lucky stars that he's still in charge, really. Let's be honest, And if it's a case where it's Amorim or Bruno to stay, for me, I'd much rather Bruno be moved on, because it just means United can go out and invest in better players, which will help the team. So, yeah, man, 100%. I'm positive about this news. Obviously broke last night that they've given him 72 hours. So you're looking at, what, Thursday, tomorrow? And there's been reports today, actually, that Bruno is looking at this offer strongly, and do I think Bruno takes the deal? I think he does, I think Bruno does go, because this offer, for me, isn't going to come around again. The fact that they want to pay that sort of money to Bruno Fernandes, for me, as I said, I can't see this offer being there again. And I think definitely he will pursue this deal, Um, just going for some of the questions, guys. Big up yourselves, each and every one of you. Guys, only 3 likes, okay? So if you're watching the content and you're enjoying, just smash that like button. Not too much to ask, obviously helps the channel to grow. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you do at GavGoesIn. And I'm only 5 short of reaching 1,500, which is good going, but a long way to go, And as I said, if you do enjoy the content, check out my other content and again, subscribe, guys. Big up yourselves. So Sham has said, I'm sure Bruno is only 30. I feel he's too young to go to Saudi. Sham, I'll be honest with you, man. He's not too young to go to Saudi because if we look at someone like John Duran, someone that I wanted at Man United, and someone that I do still believe is going to be one of the leading strikers in world football once he makes his way back to Europe. So what? John Duran is, I believe, what, 20 or 21? I think he's 21. And he's gone to Saudi for the money. And John Duran will definitely come back to Europe, probably within the next, next year or so, I would say. So to say that Bruno is only 30, I don't think he's too young. Again, he's going to be 31 next season. So, I think it's the ideal time because you look at other clubs around the world, for what Man United would ask for the money that Bruno would probably ask for, and the interest from other clubs just ain't there. So the fact that Saudi want to come in and they want to pay him, astronomical money, for me, it's a no-brainer, man, for himself, for his family, and for the club, So again, I'm just hoping that this gets over the line, because, it's impossible not to take this deal. And for me, really, I think if there's somehow how Bruno Fernandes stays, which, again, I'm hoping not, because I think for the future of the club, I think personally, if he somehow stays, I don't see this team progressing. I think the only way for this team to progress forward, I know people have been talking about a cultural reset, but for me, I think he's the main guy, Bruno Fernandes, that does need to be moved on because, again, as I've mentioned this before, he's someone that the team are heavily reliant on. Everything goes through him. He's the captain. He's the penalty taker. He's the free kick taker, corner taker. He does whatever he wants, really, which is to the detriment of the team. So for a team to be better, you need to get rid of a player that is the perceived player that everything goes through, And again, you look at other clubs, there's been many other clubs that have got rid of a key player, to make the whole team thrive. And in this situation, with the money that is on offer, 100 mil, and for the state that the club are in financially, again, there should be no one saying that Bruno has to stay or they shouldn't be taking this deal, And as I said, I think Thursday is when we're going to find out, And again, I think it's positive that the likes of Bruno, Garnacho, looking like they're being eased out the door. And I'm hoping Ineos stay firm on this, because, again, it will allow United to go in the market and just get better quality there, players that will suit the system a lot more as well. So Sham says Bruno has the stats to back up that he's done well for United over the years. He was made captain for your team too, so why push him out? Bro, what I would say, looking at Bruno Fernandes, and this is what I hate about football. Stats. People just so reliant on stats, and stats has killed the game, If I was to tell you that the likes of Andres Iniesta, Zinedine Zidane averaged, 5 or 6 goals a season, you'll be saying to me, nah, you're lying. If you go and check Iniesta and Zidane's stats, these guys average probably 5 or 6 goals a game, But no one cared because we knew that we were watching 2 of the best players in the world. And the fact that stats has now come into the game, okay, these are being used as arguments to keep certain players at clubs. And Bruno Fernandes is the ideal player in terms of why stats has, ignored performances. Because I've watched every single United game this season, and there's no one that can come and tell me that Bruno Fernandes has been good for the whole season because he hasn't. He's just got numbers, yeah. And the problem is, what people don't actually realize is that, are we actually surprised that he's getting numbers? Because I'm not surprised, because he's on every free kick, as I said, he's on every penalty, every corner. So he's bound to get stats, because when you're basically at the core of everything, you know, if you wasn't getting stats, there'll be a problem. But then what you have to ask is, what is his stats taken away from the team? Because if you look at the team as a whole, the team as a whole are poor. You know, if you look at the attackers are getting less numbers, but he's getting more numbers. So just because one player is hogging the numbers doesn't mean that he's actually a benefit to the team, because he's taken away from everyone else. You know, if you look at the example of when Cristiano Ronaldo came back to the club, Bruno's numbers went down, you know, and that wasn't a surprise, because Ronaldo took the majority of the numbers, which meant someone else was going to miss out. Then Ronaldo goes, then it goes to someone else. So that's just how football works, you know what I mean? So if Bruno goes, you know, the numbers will be shared around from other people. You're looking at Cunha coming through now. You know, Cunha can get goals. He's proven it at a team in the Premier League. You know, there's been links to Mbuemo. He'll get goals. You know, Xerxes will get his fair share and assists. So yeah, there is goals in the team. You know, and again, to say that his numbers or his stats back it up over the years, you have to look at United's last few finishes that they've produced, and Bruno has been at the core for the majority of that. You know, and again, his numbers doesn't mean that he gets a pass. You know, as I said, there's players at this club that I do believe will get better and will thrive with the likes of Bruno out of the club. You know, and as long as Bruno's here, the club, well, not the club, the manager, and the fan base have made it pretty clear that he's the majority of the fan base, should I say, have made it clear that he's essential to this team. But I'll tell you this for free: as long as that is in place, you know, then this club are going to continue to struggle. That's a fact. You know, people tell me, you know, Bruno Fernandes creates the most chances, blah, 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 you know. But then Man United striker, who has been playing for the majority of the season, even though he is shit, Rasmus Højlund, only has 3 or 4 league goals. So if your captain, you know, the most creative player, is creating so many chances, why is it that your attacker only has 3 or 4 league goals? You know, and again, there has been chances that Højlund has missed. And again, I don't rate Højlund. I think he's the worst striker in the league, you know, and he has to be moved on ASAP, you know. But if your striker's getting 3 or 4 goals, this whole your attacking midfielder or captain creates the most chances is irrelevant, because as we know as well, how these chances created get counted is because Bruno's on every free kick, every corner. If he puts the ball into the box, however shit the ball is, if a Man United player gets the head to the ball, that counts as a chance created. That's how these stats are getting used now. So again, I just implore people to look at the performance rather than the numbers, you know. And as to say, why push him out? I'm not pushing him out. But if the club wanna go in a different direction and improve, you know, and they've got an offer on the table, you take that offer and you run with it, because there's no way that Bruno Fernandes is too good to play at this team or is a necessity for this team. You know, I've been saying this for years. He's one of the main reasons why this club is struggling, you know. And yeah, again, people might look at stats, but you're looking at stats for your own benefit rather than looking at the benefit of the team, you know. But big up, Sham. Good question, man. Yeah, listen, money does talk, man. As I said, the Bruno Fernandes conundrum, man. If there's anyone, and again, if there's anyone in the chat that thinks Bruno should stay regardless of the money, then put that in. Obviously, we'll get onto this. But if that money comes in, which looks like it's on the table for both parties, man, it's a no-brainer, definitely. So Brian Harkin says, thanks, you are the first reactor that agrees with me. 100 million for a 30-year-old. Yeah, listen, Brian. I don't think there's many people out there, what I'm hoping not anyway, that would think that if Saudi are offering 100 million for a 30-year-old, you know, wouldn't take that. because Bruno Fernandes is only going to decline anyway, you know. And I think what people are doing is that they're just looking at his numbers as a reason for him to stay. Because if he didn't get the numbers and you just looked at his purely on his performances, you wouldn't be saying to keep him for 100, to reject 100 million bid. It's the numbers that are just miscuing people's minds. But then these numbers have got United nothing this season, because when Man United needed Bruno to step up in the final, he was nowhere to be seen. And he often does this. So that is the only reason why people are saying keep Bruno Fernandes, because it's the stats, you know. But again, I'll tell you, the stats have proved nothing this season, because what has it got United? You know, you see so many people saying, and again, a lot of these commentators and these pundits are problems for this as well, because they say, where would Man United be without Bruno Fernandes' numbers? Yeah. And the answer is probably a couple of places higher, but they're not winning nothing, you know. So as I said, or probably a place lower, should I say. But the reality is, this is a player that's been offered 100 million. Al Hilal won 100 million for him, and they're offering him ridiculous money. You know, it's a decision that Ineos and the club just need to take and don't even question. Because I can't actually believe Al Hilal want to spend 100 million and give him that money. It doesn't make any sense. But if they're that dumb enough to do that, you just take that and run, man. 100%. Big up to Bista Coxina. I'm guessing you're Brazilian or Portuguese. Big up. So Samuel Mark Ingram says Bruno Fernandes should take Diego Dallo with him to Saudi League. Yeah, you know what, bro? That's not a bad decision, man. I mean, if Al Hilal was to come back in with a with a 150 bid, and they want both Bruno Fernandes and Dallo, we're laughing. Take both of them, but I think Dallo will be here next season. But again, this manager loves Dallo, and Dallo is a problem for me in terms of playing as a wing-back, because I think in this system, he's a right-sided centre-back, and a very good one at it as well. So, but yeah, if Saudi came back and wanted to take Dallo, listen, there won't be no complaining over here, man, because I think that'd be a great deal to take two players that really, come as a pair, really, you would say, under this manager, and there'll be money coming into the club. So, yeah, definitely. Guys, come on, only 4 likes. Let's big up this. Let's get the likes up. Let's at least try and hit 10. So Brian says, I would sign Pedro Gonçalves if Bruno goes. For me, I wouldn't sign Gonçalves because personally, I don't want any players that the manager used to have, because I think this is where the club has gone wrong in the past. I think United need to be making more club signings, and again, making signings for the manager, there's no guarantee that this manager stays here for the long term, because, as I said, he's lucky to get next season, let's be honest, And the fact that Cunha was signed as well, that means the Gonçalves one is off the table, because I believe United will be looking for a left-footed 10 on that right-hand side, and on that left-hand side, for me, you bring back Sancho, hopefully once Chelsea activate the 5 million clause to send him back. And if you have a Sancho, you have a Cunha, Kobe as well, as a left 10. I think that's more than enough. And then the right 10, for me, I like to see Ahmad there. But, there's been links to Mbeumo. But, the Mbeumo one, I think he's more likely to go to Newcastle, if I'm honest. I don't think United will need to sell, as I said, the likes of Garnacho and Bruno for that to be a possibility. But, I want Cherki personally. If Man United can get Cherki in that right 10, then, as I said, man, that's amazing business. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. But, yeah, Gonçalves is a good player, but not for United for me, And definitely now that Cunha's there, it's a non-starter for me, 100%. So Brian says, we signed Adam Walton and Pedro Gonçalves. Our midfield looks completely different. Yeah, listen, I want, as you guys already know, I want Carlos Baleba. Baleba's the main midfield target for me, and for many reasons, as I've mentioned previously. I think the main reason for me is that he's left-footed, and in that midfield, Man United need a left-footed central midfielder that adds the balance to the team. Because if you look at the left footers in this team right now, you've got obviously Aiden Heaven, you've got Patrick Dorgu, Amad Diallo. Apart from those guys, everyone else is right-footed. So for me, Man United need more left-footed players that are starters that balance out the team. And as I said, Carlos Baleba for me would be perfect. If United could sell Bruno and get Baleba and Walton, listen, this is when I'll start taking the club more seriously, because you're going to have Casemiro still there as the experience. And then you've got two young guys in Baleba and Walton who have the potential to be two of the best players in the league and in Europe. So for me, yeah, I'm a massive fan of Adam Walton. But I think Baleba should be made as much as a priority as what Walton is for me, probably because he's left-footed. And if I'm looking at, ball-playing midfielders, I think both of them are ball-playing midfielders, press-resistant, both of them as well. With Baleba's aggressive as well. He's tenacious to win the ball back. I'd liken Baleba to a Fred. I think he's a more technical Fred. And again, if Man United don't go in for Baleba, you've heard it here first. He's going to be playing for one of the big teams in Europe. In the league, I see him going to a Chelsea, a Man City, hopefully not an Arsenal, a Liverpool. I think he's that level of player. And if we're looking around Europe, don't be surprised if it's a Barca, a Real Madrid. Obviously Real Madrid's unlikely because they got Camavinga, who's the same similar kind of profile. But a Bayern Munich, I think he's that level. He's going to be that level. He's going to go in the same way that the likes of Basuma and Caicedo, going to a bigger club for me. And United need to be all over that. So as I said, yeah, I think him and Walton together will be great. For sure. But again, we'll have to wait and see because a lot of it's going to depend on the sales, Big up to Exedra. Yeah, big up, bro, for coming on. So Sham says, what's Sham, sorry. Saeed, sorry, says, I hope Cunha isn't like Kai Havertz. No, I mean, for a start, they're two different profiles, As you know, Kai Havertz is actually a number 10. That he's actually playing as a false 9, but coming as a central midfielder. And again, Arsenal have a massive problem with Kai Havertz, because Havertz is their highest paid player, or one of them. And the fact that this manager brought him in as a central midfield player, I think the thing with Kai Havertz, is that if he was brought in and as a number 10, that would have made more sense. But he can't do that because he's got Martin Odegaard. And unless you're going to move on Odegaard and then give Kai Havertz that responsibility to play as a number 10, the Kai Havertz conundrum is a tough one for Arsenal because everyone knows Arsenal need an actual out-and-out striker. But the problem is, what do you do with Kai Havertz? Because being one of their highest paid players, when he's fit, you're more or less saying he has to play. And the three positions that he plays, which is central midfield, number 10, and as a striker, the number striker, as we know, they need an out-and-out striker. The number 10, that's more or less Odegaard's position, even though Odegaard plays slightly deeper than a number 10, but Odegaard's there. And central midfield, we already know he doesn't really work there. So they've got a problem with Kai Havertz, in my opinion, in that sense. Because it's either they sell Odegaard and put Havertz there, or they just get another striker and then Havertz has to kind of fight for his place, So Arsenal have a problem there, But to say that he's like Cunha, he's nothing like Cunha. I think Cunha is primed and ready to take a club that is a fallen giant back to the top, And I like Cunha's attitude, man. I like the way that he goes about the game. He's someone that just believes he's good, and he has that kind of attitude as, I'm just going to just win the game and do what I got to do. And players like this, they're worth their weight in gold, man, really. And we have to just hope that Cunha hits the ground running, which I have no doubt that he will. But there is obviously a thing out there where, he could flop, but I don't think he will. I don't think he will. I think if the team are thriving, you know, I think he'll be at the I think he'll be at the core of it, you know. And again, he's back in the Brazilian squad as well, you know, so that would be confidence for him. So yeah, I think he's gonna be a good player, definitely for United. Killer says I would sell for 100 million, 100%. Yeah, listen, as I said, I don't think there's many people that wouldn't sell for 100 million. Bruno Fernandes. I think it's obvious to sell him for 100 million because, as I said, if he was like, let's say, mid-20s, you know, I think it would be a bit harder in terms of what the fan base would probably be more resistant to that. But the fact that he's going to be turning 31 next season, you know, and the club are in that financial state, you know what I mean? It's an easy one for me. So, yeah, as I said, I think definitely, man, we have to hope that that bid comes in and it's accepted. Sham said, I've watched Bruno. He's a bad apple. His moral drops big time when he isn't getting his way or the team are losing. That's not good from a captain. Yeah, listen, perfect. Because what I would say is that for me, he's not a captain. You know, he's just been made the captain for me because, you know, he's probably got the biggest aura in the team in sense of he knows the team rely on him, you know. But in terms of a captain, he ain't no captain because the amount of times this guy, and I've picked this out plenty of times, the amount of times Bruno Fernandes, you know, moans at the referee, moans at his own teammates. So if he loses the ball, it's someone else's fault. If he gives the ball away, he starts pointing, saying you should have been there. You know, if he gets a shot off, you know, if someone lays him the ball off, and he fucks the shot up, he'll start blaming others. You know, I've never seen someone pass the blame to other players more than this guy. You know, so for me, he's a horrible captain, and I think personally, you know, he is someone that, as I said, the team will thrive once he's out of there, you know. And people probably won't see it now because they're in love with his numbers, but people shouldn't worry about the numbers. Just worry about how much of a team will thrive without a player that really is holding them down, you know. And as I said, his numbers can be replaced because, again, how football works, you know, if you've got someone like a Xerxes, and I'm still looking at Xerxes as being restored to being back to being a striker, you know, Xerxes is gonna create for the team. And if you've got players out wide like a Cunha, you know, like an Embuemo that's been rumoured, these guys are goal-scoring wide men, you know. So if you've got a Xerxes there and you've got goal-scoring wide men, Bruno's goals can be replaced by those players. But then in theory, what you're going to get is a more solid midfield if you can get in a Baleba or a Walton or an Edison, you know. So the team will be better with the sell of definitely this player. And if you can get goal scorers from out wide and you get a facilitator as a striker and you get in a Delap or a Mateta, listen, the goals will be there. So people should just drop the stats thing with Bruno Fernandes because they will be replaced. You know, he won't be the last player to leave on Ineos's watch. You know, so again, it's a no-brainer for me, man, 100%. So Brian says Bruno was nowhere to be seen against West Ham. He got sent off against Wolves. He was terrible against Fulham and Brighton and against Newcastle and Nottingham Forest. He was non-existent in those games. Yeah, but listen, Bruno Fernandes has been doing this ever since his time at Man United. You know, I will call him a flat track bully because against the lower teams, you know, he might get in a goal or an assist, but against the bigger teams when it really matters, he doesn't show up, and that's been going on for years. You know, I think, as I said, I've watched more or less every Man United game since he's been at the club, and you know, when he first came in, I think the club were just starved, you know, because they had someone like Jesse Lingard playing in a 10 that they didn't really rate, even though I thought Lingard was a decent player, but they were just starved. And then when Bruno came in, you know, Bruno came in, was getting numbers, but again, what people didn't actually realise is that he was playing as a number 10 in a three-man midfield, but the amount of times he was vacating the midfield, you know, people were just looking at, oh, he's getting a goal or getting an assist and ignoring his defensive responsibilities, you know. And when the team are getting cut open, it was because the amount of times Bruno was vacating the midfield, leaving the likes of Matic and I think it might have been Pogba at the time or someone else, the amount of times he was leaving them exposed wasn't getting talked about because people were just too interested in the Bruno conundrum and him getting numbers, you know. And again, I implore people to just ignore the numbers and watch the performance, you know, because the amount of times he gives the ball away, you know, is a joke. And as I said, that contributes to the ball getting turned over and teams attacking, you know. As you could see in the Europa League final, the goal come from Bruno trying to play a Hollywood pass, getting cut out, and the goal came from there. You know, people might look at, you know, Luke Shaw again and probably Onana, but the problem started from Bruno Fernandes giving the ball away, you know. And as I said, he does this very often, but people ignore it because it's him and because they look at his stats, you know. So again, ignore the stats and just watch the performance. Said says Man United should get Trossard and Partey. No, we shouldn't. No, we shouldn't. I think you're trying to. I think you're being serious, man. So not only were United not going for those players, but they're not two players that United need anyway. So yeah, as Sham said, they're both, even though they're over 30, isn't a problem. But it's just that they're at Arsenal, and United not going to go in for any Arsenal players, and they're not the kind of profiles that United need. So yeah. Exedra says, yeah, Baleba, Baina, Stella would be. Yeah, listen, I think we've spoken about this already, Exedra. So yeah, Baleba and Baina for me, 100%. The Baina one, you know, for me, I don't really see as much now because Cunha's there, you know, and Baina in this system will play as a left 10. And on that right 10, you're looking at a left footer most probably. So again, Angelo Stella, I've not seen too much of him, you know. So I'll take your word on that one. But yeah, Baleba for me and Baina, I love at Man United. But as I said already about Baina, I can see Baina either staying in Spain, you know, or, you know, Man City could look at him, you know, a Chelsea, who knows. But I think he stays in Spain personally, you know, but he's a very good player. So Saeed says we need oil money too. Hopefully we get a good team owner. Yeah, that's not going to happen, Saeed. Obviously, Ineos are here with the Glazers, so that's not happening. The chance to get oil money in has passed, let's be honest. So Killer says, I'll be surprised if that offer doesn't go through. If it doesn't, they definitely see something in Bruno. But no, it's not that. It's not that. What it is that Bruno is loved by the majority of his fan base. You know, he's loved by the manager. And it's one of them things where I'm just looking at Ineos and putting all that to the side. Because as I said, I think the fact that this bid seems like it's incoming, you know, if Ineos are looking at the betterment of the team, which they should be, Jason Wilcox, etc., then it's a no-brainer that you accept this bid, you know. And as I said, I think I don't think it's necessary that they see something in him. The manager does, and the majority of the fan base does, but Ineos and the Glazers, or Ineos, shall we say, and Jim Ratcliffe, they're in charge of footballing operations. So they should just look at what's the betterment for the team and accept the bid, because you would think that they can invest in the team properly with the sale of this player, you know. And I've heard people say, who's going to be the captain? Again, captains are born, you know. It might not look like there's many captains at the club because Bruno's there, but when he goes, someone else will inherit it, you know. For me, I've mentioned Matthias de Ligt, you know. For me, Casemiro, hopefully he's still at the club, it should have been a captain anyway. But Casemiro, de Ligt are the first ones I look at straight away. And then again, you know, you've got Cunha, who's been captain at Wolves, you know, so there's captains there. But yeah, this whole thing that there's no captains there is nonsense, you know. Move him on, and as I said, there'll be captains that are born, because people will step up naturally, you know. Brian says, I like the look of Hugo Larsson. Is that Sebastian Larsson's son? I've not heard of Hugo Larsson personally, but Yeah, let me know if that's Sebastian Larson, Henrik Larsson. Sorry, let me know if that's Henrik Larsson's son. Um, and if he is, I think he might be a striker, but I'm not too sure if that's the same one. Guys, come on, there's 13 of you watching, only 4 likes. Okay, come on, let's get the likes up. Okay, I want at least 10 likes. Mods, try and encourage everyone to hit the like button. And again, let's make sure we subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Killer says, Trossard party will never happen, and I wouldn't take them. United needs some fresh, talented players. Yep, I agree. So Zedra says, we just have to wait and see, Gav. They have to prove us wrong that Amorim actually is the guy. Yeah, I think where I am with Amorim now, as I've said previously, I'm not going to be, frustrated or saying Amorim needs to go, etc. Because, if it's looking like they've made their decision to keep him, which I don't agree with, but if they're keeping him, if the likes of Bruno, Garnacho and Hilal are at the club, then I'm more optimistic because it just means that, United can get some proper quality players into the club with the sale of those players, And the whole Amorim thing is going to purely be on him to do something because for me, if you're getting better players in, you're going to have to make it work. Otherwise, you're going to be out of a job. And for me, the fact that these players are being talked about to leave the club, as I said, I think I'm more optimistic that there's talk about these players. Guys, I'm going to get onto the Garnacho thing in a minute. Just going to go through some of your questions again on Bruno. So Brian Harkins says he's a central midfielder. He is strong, athletic, quick. He plays midfield for Frankfurt. Okay, yeah, I've not really heard of him, to be honest with you. Okay, he's Henrik Larsson's son. Okay. I mean, if he's Henrik Larsson's son, Henrik Larsson was a top player, man. So he has to be of some good level, you know what I mean? Because if anyone remembers Henrik Larsson at Celtic, at obviously Man United and Barcelona, what a top player he was, man. So again, if he is his son, then by all means, man, I think he's someone that needs to have a look at because again, Henrik Larsson was a very good player, man. So yeah, fair enough. Killer says if Bruno leaves and they sign the players they want, where do you think they'll finish next season with Amorim as manager? I think with Amorim as manager and they get in the players that have been rumoured and Bruno goes, I'd expect nothing less than a top 6 because you're looking at 1 game a week. Cunha coming in, Mbuemo rumoured to be coming in as well. The likes of Mateta and Liam Delap rumoured as well. And you never know, they might do some business. Hopefully they get a couple of midfielders. As I said, Baleba and Wharton have been mentioned as well. Hopefully, I see nothing less than a top 6, and I'll be happy with that. I think in terms of where United are coming from, that'd be a good start because I think the top 6 this season is going to be tough with the amount of money that's looking like it's going to be spent from the other clubs. So, yeah, I think top 6 will be a good starting point personally, But until the outgoings, I think the outgoings are more important for me because once we can see the outgoings, then we can kind of get a gauge on what players need to be signed and where, So the outgoings for me are definitely what I'm looking at, if I'm honest. Which, again, brings me on to Alejandro Garnacho, Guys, if anyone's got the comments from Ruben Amorim, put them in the chat. So I can't actually remember the full comments, what he said about Garnacho. But you know what it is? This is music to my ears that it's finally looking like this player is going to be moved out, because, as I said, his attitude stinks, and has stunk from the day he's become a regular player in the first team. Obviously, as we know, he's a massive fan of Ronaldo, and you can see he's trying to mold himself into that kind of player, but hasn't got the talent, Again, I don't really care how old he is, you know, because this guy's had over 100 games in Man United's first team. So he's experienced now, you would say. But the fact that Amorim has come out with the comments that he has done, you know, I can't actually remember the comments. Again, if anyone's got the comments from what Amorim has said about Bruno Fernandes, yeah, put that in the chat. But the fact that the manager seems to have just washed his hands with him, you know, even though I do think Garnacho had a bit of a point that he didn't play in the final, because as soon as Mason Mount got fit, Mason Mount replaced him, and it's not like Mason Mount played well. So I do see the frustration from Garnacho, but this guy really needs to leave anyway. So so as I said, man, it's music to my ears that we're waiting for Bruno's 72-hour ultimatum, and then you've got the Garnacho comments from Amorim looking like he's going to be on his way as well. So yeah, it's positive news, man. Definitely positive news, and as I said, I think, how much are we looking for Bruno Fernandes? I mean for Garnacho, I think, yeah, probably about 40 million. I'd say what might be the fee. You know, I think it was easily going to be probably, you would say 50. You know, I think 50 million, 55 million, which was probably rumored before. But I think now, if we're looking at 40 million for Garnacho, I think, yeah, I think that's probably what it's going to be, because his value's dropped as well, you know. And his value was only high because, you know, people, obviously the media, you know, the pundits, the fan base were hyping him up. Obviously just seeing news now, obviously no surprise there. Zubimendi going to Arsenal, 50 million release clause has been met, which obviously again is no surprise. But yeah, I think 40 to 45 million for Garnacho, I think is fine. Again, what club is he actually going to go to? Because, you know, I'm hearing Chelsea. I don't think Chelsea come in for Garnacho, and if they do, you know, I think you have to question Todd Bowley, you know, as to, and clearly as to what the hell they're seeing in Garnacho, because I can't believe that they would possibly send Sancho back and then take Garnacho, you know, with what is out there and what they could potentially get with some of the money, with the money that they've got coming in, you know. If I'm Chelsea, I don't see why they haven't gone in for an Eze, you know. Rodrigo, Eze, Rafael Leao has been mentioned, but for me, I don't see the Garnacho one. So you're probably looking at Italy, you know. Napoli were mentioned, you know. I think Spain was mentioned, Atletico Madrid going back there, which I don't see. So again, I'm not really sure what clubs come in for Garnacho, you know, but I think you'd have to think it's going to be abroad, because I can't see any team in the league, you know, going in for him, if I'm honest. You know, I think the only one is likely is Chelsea. But why would Chelsea go in for him when there's plenty of other players who are better that they can actually get? So, yeah, that's what I would say. So Sham says Hugo Larsson is Swedish too, but he's white and ginger. Definitely not Henrik's son. Henrik's son is Jordan Larsson, who plays for, yeah. Do you know what? I thought it was Jordan Larsson. Yeah, he's a striker who plays for, I think he plays for Copenhagen, I believe. Yeah, yeah. So Jordan Larsson plays for Copenhagen. He's a striker. I remember. So Hugo Larsson, okay, I'm not seeing him play. But yeah, if you think he's a good player, then I'll have to watch a couple of clips of him, you know, because for me, I can always tell when someone's a good player from the first, you know, first couple of seconds of watching them. I can already see what they've. But yeah, as I said, I think for me, he's 20. I mean, I've not seen any links, you know. Has Hugo Larsson been linked to anyone else? So Brian says, my brother is a Celtic fan, and yes, he is Henrik Larsson's son. Okay. I'm not too sure, guys, because as I said, if he's white and ginger, I mean, that's a stretch, man, for him to be his son. So, if anyone remembers Henrik Larsson with the Platts, you know, but yeah, as I said, I'm not seeing him play, man. So I'll have to kind of give him a watch sometime. Killer says, if you think Amorim is a poor manager and gets these players and finish top 6 next season, would you say Amorim is a good manager? Good question. No, I wouldn't, because if they bring in players like Cunha's been signed, if they get in players like Cunha, as I say, Embuemo, Baleba, Walton, or Edison. And again, these are the players that have just been rumoured, you know, and it could be others. I mean, I've seen enough with this manager, with the current team he's got now, to know that if you're any top coach, you'll be improving players. So to answer your question, if United get top 6 with new players, would I say it's on Amrim? It's not going to be on Amrim. It's going to be on the players, because if I could see that he's improved one player from what he's got now, then I'm more inclined to say, you know, that he's a coach that improves players. But Man United have recorded their lowest finish in how many years? Lowest points total ever. So, and that's basically on Amorim, you know. So it's one of them things to say, yeah, if he does get top 6, fair enough. But you couldn't say it's because of Amorim. I think it'll be down to the players, just like it was down to the players that got into a Europa League final, because the manager didn't do anything to change the course of the game in that final against Tottenham. So that's why, for me, yeah, I wouldn't say he's a good manager. You know, I think for him to be a good manager in my eyes, you know, I would have to see him an improvement on some of the players that he's got now, you know. And again, I'd have to see improvement on who he's picking, because the biggest thing for me on Amorim is his selection, you know, where he's playing certain players, and most importantly, the kind of players he favours. You know, he favours Bruno Fernandes, Mason Mount, 2 players that I don't see, if you're a manager that wants to play good attacking football, should be praising these 2 players, because these are 2 players, for me, that have to be out the club, you know. So, yeah, but good question, man. Anyway, big up. So Brian Harkins says, so basically, Amorim said he better find a new club this summer. Yeah, and again, I think just like the Bruno Fernandes one, you know, if Amorim is staying for the start of this season, if it means the likes of Garnacho goes and a Bruno goes, then I'm all for that. You know, if it means the manager stays and then them 2 players go, you know, I wouldn't really have much of a problem with that. So, yeah, but if he's saying he has to find a new club, again, Bruno, it's the end of the road for Garnacho, which again we more or less know anyway, you know. So that's why I said I'm more optimistic, because as I said, I think United need to get rid of a few players in this first team, definitely, and those are the 2 players, Bruno and Garnacho, that should be heading it for me, you know. If that wasn't true, I would have. I know. So there is no Hugo Larsson, but there is Hugo Larsson. Yeah. So obviously Hugo Larsson's name is spelt the same way as it's spelt the same way as Henrik Larsson. But guys, again, I don't know if he's his son. Big up to Dan Tom, said, "What's this about? Hire from Netherlands." Yeah, big up, man. So obviously we're talking on Bruno Fernandes has 72 hours ultimatum from Al Hilal, and obviously the comments from Ruben Amorim on Garnacho. So yeah, guys, come on, only 5 likes. Let's at least get to 10 likes. Seven of you in there watching. Okay, let's try and get up to 10 likes before we wrap. Any other questions, guys, before we wrap? You know, as I said, Arsenal finalising the deal for Zubimendi, which again was to be expected. Dan Tom, if you don't have idea what I'm saying, have a look at the title. Have a look at the title. I'm not going to waste my time going through that again. Have a look at the title. Guys, any other questions before we wrap? News today as well with Ekatike as well. So Ekatike looking like he's attracting interest from Liverpool. Liverpool actually want, well, I say Liverpool. Eintracht Frankfurt actually want 84 million for him. 100 million euros, I think 84 million. I can't see Liverpool paying that, you know. And again, I don't think Ekatike has a release clause either. So I think that kind of offer there is going to be probably out of Liverpool's reach. You know, I don't see Liverpool spending that amount of money. You know, it could be an instalment, you know, which again, I think would probably be a better way to go. But as I said, man, that's astronomical money really for Ekatike. I do think he's a good player though, to be fair. I do think he is. I do think he has got quality, man. And I think again, the fact that there's not too many strikers going in football right now, you know, I think this is why these players are getting linked with these kind of bids. And again, if anyone remembers, Ekatike used to be at PSG, you know, so, you know, PSG in a sense, they might be a bit frustrated that they've actually let him go because, you know, if they move on Gonzalo Ramos, you know, you could have Ekatike now that could actually play through the middle. You know, I know they play with the fluid front three, but again, that would be a good move. That would be a good addition for their squad, man. But they sold him to Eintracht Frankfurt, and now Frankfurt are asking for 84 mil. You know what I mean? It's mad. Saeed says Ekatike and Boniface are good strikers. We might sign one of them. Yeah, I think you've mentioned this before, Saeed. I mean, I would definitely take Ekatike or Boniface. You know, but Man United haven't been linked to either player, so you know, I think it's safe to say, you know, they're not really interested in them. I think United obviously have been linked to the likes of Mateta, Liam Delap, who's looking at the main target option. Obviously, there's talks with Gyökeres, which ain't gonna happen. Osman as well. So yeah, I think Ekatike and Boniface for sure might be two players on the move. You know, I've not really heard too much of Boniface, you know, but I think Boniface would suit a lot of clubs. I think Boniface would suit Chelsea, you know. I think he would suit Liverpool as well, you know, because he can play as a target man. I mean, he's not someone that would run the channels as much as other players, but in terms of a target man striker, I do think, yeah, he would suit quite a few clubs, you know. But again, he hasn't been linked with no one. And the fact that Bayer Leverkusen have lost Frimpong, looking like they're losing Wirtz as well. You know, will they want to lose another player? Oh, well, Jonathan Tah as well has gone to Bayern Munich. You know, would they want to lose another player? Because that'd be 4 players, you know. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Brian says, here's the problem with strengthening our team this summer. Other teams are going to get stronger. Yeah, I agree. I agree, which is why it's important that the Bruno Fernandes sale is crucial, because you get rid of Bruno Fernandes, you can possibly get 2 players in strong positions that United need. You know, because imagine if United sell Bruno Fernandes, they sell Garnacho, and then they go and get, you know, a Baleba, a Walton, you know, or a Baleba, an Edison, you know, and then Buemo, a Cherky. You know, there's deals to be done there, you know, and you've got players that can potentially come back. Because if I'm Man United, I'm bringing both Anthony and Sancho back, you know, making them part of the squad, which means you can save money on other areas. Because this system that Amorim plays, if you bring Anthony back, you know, it will mean that you haven't the necessity to go and get a wing back, because if you don't want to play Ahmad there, you know, because I think Anthony could play there as well, 100%. You know, I think it saves on different positions, as I said. And I think if you bring a Sancho back, you know, that's another 10 there. So the necessity to go and get another 10 won't be there. So I think it's important that Sancho and Anthony do come back and are part of the squad, because I do think both players have a lot to offer, you know, regardless of what some fans may say. So, but we'll see what happens with that one anyway. So Saeed says, who would you sign, Baleba or Wharton if Bruno leaves? Baleba. I think Baleba's crucial, a crucial signing. I like Wharton, don't get me wrong. But I think Baleba, because he's left-footed, as balanced to the midfield, is a must for me, you know. Livramento or Cucurella could fit in his system. Yeah, but we're not getting either player. So, yeah, we're not getting Livramento or Cucurella. So, there's no point. Let's do realistic signings. You know, Livramento's is in Champions League. Cucurella's in Champions League, you know. And, again, both teams were asked for ridiculous money. And Man United don't need Cucurella, really, because, you know, Dorgu's come through the door, you know. And there's probably other players. You got Diego Leon coming back from loan as well. I know these guys are young, but Cucurella's not someone that you're going to get or probably need. And Livramento, again, you're not getting Livramento. So, yeah, let's part that one. So the fact that we don't have Champions League football makes it easier for players to leave the club so we can refresh with a new squad. Yeah, exactly. But the start is Bruno Fernandes, Garnacho, Rasmus Højlund. Them three in particular, because I think them three are easy to get rid of. Luke Shaw, Mason Mount will be difficult to get rid of because of the money they're on. And the fact that no one's going to want them as well. So, yeah, they'll be harder. And then the free transfers, obviously we know Lindelof, Ericsson, Johnny Evans. And again, you're saving about, you know, you're saving 120 grand Lindelof. So that's money into the club. The same with Ericsson, you know, and Johnny Evans. So you're looking at about, you know, about 300 grand worth saved of wages a week, you would say, from those three players. Obviously, Rashford as well, which is a big thing that needs to be sorted out, you know. If you can get 40 million for Rashford, pure profit, you know, getting his wage as well off the wage books. Again, there's money there to spend. So, yeah, there is things for United to do. Money can be spent if they get rid of the right players. The likes of, as I said, Bruno, Garnacho, Højlund, Rashford. The three that have gone on free transfers as well. There's money there to be. There's money that they can spend, but we just need to get that over the line, definitely. So before you go, it's been rumored that Ronaldo might sign for Al Hilal, same contract terms as Al Nassr. He can link up with Bruno if that's the case. I don't know about that. I don't see Al Hilal signing both Bruno and Ronaldo. I don't see that. I think Ronaldo's looking for a new chapter, but I don't think that's going to be in Saudi still. You know, I think that's going to be probably, you know, who knows? He might even go back home to Sporting Lisbon. That's what I heard before. But I don't see him going to Al Hilal. And I'm hoping it's not a case where it's Ronaldo or Bruno. But again, we'll have to wait and see on that one. Big up to Zero Requiem, says better to try for world-class signings and risk missing out, or go the Liverpool route. Seek potential unknowns in hope of them turning big. But again, who are the world-class signings, Zero Requiem? Because, you know, Man United really and truly are not in a position to sign world-class players now. You know, I think they'll be doing a disservice to those world-class players because the team are not in the position to sign these kind of players. So for me, you know, for what they've been linked with, you know, I think is the ballpark that United are playing with, you know. I would love Florian Wirtz at United, but the Florian Wirtz was never going to happen. So, yeah, I think once United, you know, get back to being respectable again, then I think we can kind of look at these. But there's not really too many world-class players out there, you know. But the players that I've mentioned, the likes of Baleba, Waltons, Embuemos, you know, Ryan Cherky's, Eze's, Lucabers, you know, these kind of players that Delapse, Mateta, these kind of players that I've mentioned, they will help get United back to being respectable. And then once that happens, you can start looking at the more lucrative world-class players. But at this moment in time, United are not at that level, unfortunately, you know. So, who would you rather sign, Walton or Joe Linton? Walton. And again, you're not getting Joe Linton, and he suits Newcastle well, to be honest, as well. So Brian Harkin said, I've heard that Eric Ten Hag wants Mason Mount as a replacement for Florian Wirtz. Listen, if that is the truth, then which again I'm not too sure, but I hope that's true. Listen, if that is a possibility, listen, you get rid of Mason Mount as soon as you can. Free up the number 7 shirt, free up his wages. If Eric Ten Hag wants Mount, which I'm hoping, then let's hope that's a possibility. I'm hoping that's true, but I've not heard nothing on that, to be honest with you. Yeah, I'm hoping it's true. So Saeed says, man, we need a new goalkeeper. Do you think we should sign to Stegen? Yeah, we're not getting to Stegen. Saeed, I think you're very optimistic, man, but we're not getting to Stegen. Stegen is Barca's number 1. And again, how much are you looking at to spend? Like, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen at all, man. No one from United going to come near ETH. Well, remember, he did sign Mason Mount, and he did love Mason Mount. So who knows? But if Ten Hag wants Mason Mount, listen, you do that deal. Even if he came in with a bid of 40 mil, just get rid. Just get rid. Mason Mount's injury prone. He's got number 7 on his back. He's on 250. Yeah, it's a no-brainer for me, man. No-brainer, 100%. But guys, listen up. Big up yourselves for coming on each and every time. If you're just coming in there, make sure you smash the like button. I've only got 7 likes. At least try and hit 10. And again, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, make sure you do. Before we go, Sai says we should send Obi on loan because we don't give him a chance. He was balling out at Arsenal. Yeah, I think a loan is the perfect move for Chido Obi. Because obviously he's not used to men's football, and as I said, he needs to be playing regular men's football, because at this moment in time he's clearly not ready. As a footballer, he's not my style of footballer. But I think if he goes and plays men's football, and just gets and gets more experience, that's what he needs at this age. He's only 17. And hasn't played much, so he definitely needs a loan. And again, he needs a loan in this country. I think he needs to be playing, even if he goes to the Championship, and plays regular football in the Championship, I think that's what he needs at this stage of his development. But him just sitting on the bench isn't doing him any good, because he's too good, really, you would say, for the under-18s, under-23s, But first team, he ain't the level, so he needs a loan, definitely. But yeah, big up everyone for coming on, guys. As I said, each and every time. And as I said, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you smash that like button. I'm going to be back tomorrow, but I'm going to do a pre-record, obviously, my next Gen 50. So make sure you give that a look out. Obviously, I won't spoil you with the player I'm going to do. But he's a player that, Man United are not going to sign, but he's a player that I think will be signed by a big club in Europe, probably in this window, if they're looking for a defender. So, yeah, keep an eye on that one, which should be scheduled. I'm not sure what time yet. But, yeah, as I said, I'll be doing that tomorrow. As I said, guys, big up yourselves for coming on each and every time. As I said, make sure you check your notifications to see when I go live next. And I'll catch you guys in a bit. Take it easy.